Do 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 do.
I see you. I don't see us, but I think that's probably okay.
Okay, let's see. There we are. We are now live, I believe.
Yeah.
Live. There we go. Hey, we are live. How come you're not there?
I don't. There I am.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Come back. Where'd you
I'm here.
go?
I'm here.
Hey, I'm Blaine Bartlett,
I'm Dolan White.
and sounding like Kermit the Frog right now.
Yeah. We were just laughing. I sound like the analogy was rode hard, put away wet. That sounds like who I am today.
Yep.
Kermit the Frog.
Rode hard, put away wet. An old,
Got no
old,
voice.
old,
This is as good
old
as it's
phrase.
going to get. Oh man.
Yeah, this is as good as you're going to get today. So we're going to give your voice as much rest as we can today, but I still insist that you speak every now and then, just for
I'm
comic
here.
relief, if nothing else.
Exactly. Why not? Oh my.
Well, folks, this is the Power of You. We are going to be focusing on the final aspect of decision making. So we've done 5 previously, beginning with For the Sake of What, and then we just kind of wandered through a model that we'll show you here in just a moment. This is the final in this decision series that we're working with here. So the whole idea, in large part, is I mean, it's a pretty simple idea, actually. The power of you, and the focus on this is that leaders lead decisions. It's that simple. That's one of the leaders cause movement. That's what a leader does. They cause movement, and we want to be, in some way, shape, or form, somewhat intentional about that movement. Is it going in a direction that is actually going to serve us and serve our team and ultimately our organization? And that's where decision making comes into play. If you've been following us on the previous 5 sessions, the real decisions we're talking about here are not the CapEx expenditure where millions of dollars are involved, and the health and well-being of the organization is at stake. We're talking here more about the mid-level and the minor decisions that get made that aggregate over time, that actually, as a body, influence the whole direction of the organization. You have this meeting, people nod their heads and say, yes, I'm in, but around the water cooler, they go, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. And they make a decision. They just sit on it. Okay, well, this too shall pass. Those are the kinds of decisions we're talking about. So how do you actually begin to facilitate a way for people in the body of the organization to make aligned decisions? That's what this whole series has been focused on. So,
and in short terms, I'm going to say ditto.
Okay.
No, it really is. It is all about that. It's funny you mentioned that, because I think a lot of leaders get hung up on this concept of decisions means it's the big, ginormous elephant in the room, right? This is the decision, right? And we're going to carry this out. And it really is about an analogy you use, Blaine, not to borrow your analogy, but the trunk of the tree and the leaf. If you think of the decisions, if you guys all close your eyes and visualize it for a moment, other than my voice helping you visualize that, but the trunk of the tree and then the leaf decisions that go into it. And it is that influence that leaders carry forward from decisions. Leaders lead decisions. And leaders just don't make decisions.
Yeah, they lead decisions. They lead the whole decision-making process. And part of the reason around the water cooler that things start to go off the rails are some of the things that you see up on the screen right now.
Yeah.
People aren't clear about, why are we making this decision anyway? Uncertainty comes into play here. It doesn't align with something that they were told was important. They've got too much information coming at them. Yeah, I mean, it's just, a data dump, and they're going, what do we do with this? They've got their own way of making up meaning about what's going on, and that's rooted in something called cognitive bias, confirmation bias, subjective argument, judgments that aren't legitimately and robustly explored. And then there's, organizational politics, conflicting agendas, and this is particularly showing up. Yeah, if you've got a matrixed organization, if you're large enough to have something like that, where there's a lot of dotted line reporting relationships, risk aversion. I'll get my head handed to me if I go sideways on this. Excuse me. I'm getting what you've got. You're contagious.
Over Zoom, over over StreamYard, we could possibly share this.
Yeah. Who said it wasn't communicable?
I know. What the heck?
Yeah. And then the final piece here has to do, and this is, once again, something that derails, the intention behind a lot of decision making is balancing short-term pressure and long-term vision.
Right.
There's a cost benefit dynamic that comes into play here. And that's one of the things that we're going to look at in this session today is kind of what's the cost of saying yes? What's the opportunity costs? And there's an upside and a downside to it.
Perfect.
So, yeah, Tom's Shoes. I mean, I love this company. And Tom Bilyeu, he's got a fascinating book out. But one of the things he's talking about here is that the market will update faster than we can. And so it's a question of adapt or die. And that adaptation scenario is rooted in effective decision making. Oh, mic drop. That's what it's about.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. It is though, but it is. Adapt is that ability to lead a decision. Because it means that this whole thing about having companies having organizations having people in it is just creates all kinds of complexities. So much easier to lead if you had no people. But it is that ability. It's market updates faster than you do. Adapt. If you don't adapt, if you just micromanage it, if you just command and control that decision.
Yep. And this whole notion of adapt or die, it is a response, not a reaction, but a response to change. And to Tom's point here, things are squirrely out there right now.
There's a lot of adapting going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as we're speaking this right now, in his infinite wisdom, our fearless leader, Mr. Trump, has imposed tariffs, and the rationale and all kinds of stuff, is open to speculation, but the impact is dramatic. We've got the markets falling, just over the cliff right now. Supply chains are being disrupted. And so what decisions are you going to be making in your organization?
How do you adapt?
Yeah. Let's make this real.
It's interesting you say that, because regardless of political, it's funny because I think people lose track. It's easy to get lost in political proclivities, but there is that thing that sits in the middle of all that says it is
what it is,
and it is, and therefore because it is, you must adapt and lead the decision. Since, to go back to the slide we talked about.
That one back over there.
All right.
And how you go about doing that. The last 5 sessions, we've referenced this model. Actually, every time we do the power review, we bring these 2 models in, because these are the 2 models that Dylan and I actually work with when we're working with our clients.
Yeah.
The left-hand model, as you're looking at the screen, the leadership universe. Most organizational leadership functions are organized around vision, strategy, and tactics, which is the why, the what, and the how. Why are we doing what we're doing? Kind of what's the vision in there? What's the strategic direction we want to be moving? And then tactically, how do we execute on that strategy? That is where things go off the rails, is when people begin to think that that's the only place they need to focus, because decisions aren't actually organized in these 3 domains. They really aren't. They have their roots in something called mindset. And mindset has to do with that 95% of the unconscious subconscious that drives the behavior of people in life. And there's a lot of psychological studies that indicate that behavior, our behavior, yours and mine, is literally driven by these psychological, these subliminal, these hidden mindset dynamics, belief systems, value structures, experiences, that habituated behavior, thinking, ways of thinking and feeling. All of that stuff is in the mindset domain. And until we can uncover that and work with it, these are where decisions start to go off the rail. Because we're not making decisions in fidelity with what it is that we say that we want to have as a result. Okay. Yeah. We may objectively think we are, but subjectively our behavior starts to show something completely different.
Yeah.
And then this is where the 4 pillars will start to come in. How do you begin to surface that mindset conversation?
Right. And we'll deal with some of this today as we're talking about some of the topics, but it really is the 4 pillars that we talk about, which is to Blaine's point, which is how do we move it from into reality, which is trust and autonomy. Autonomy is the willingness for people to take an action. They trust, so they're willing to take an action. Communication, a lot of conversation around communication. I'm not going to get into that, but transparency is the key word that we lean in on. Transparency is reliant upon our ability to have a trusted relationship. And then growth and innovation. Growth is that thing that we're seeking from a business perspective. There's the definition of growth, but in a team perspective, it is how do I grow my team? How do I help my team improve over time? And innovation is that willingness to try and experiment, to fall 6, rise 7. And then accountability in short, is not, I say this every time, it's not a Trello board, it's not a spreadsheet. Accountability is that mutual commitment that we have to each other that's rooted in innovation, rooted in transparency, communication, and trust. So these 4 pillars go around and around and around and around in a circle of life.
Yeah, the circle of life. Okay.
Indeed.
Yeah, we call this this series. And by the way, I mean, this is an ongoing series. Dolan and I are doing this every week for the foreseeable future. I mean, every Thursday. I mean, probably count on us doing it through the end of this year at least. We got more content than God, so
probably
we're going to be bringing a lot of stuff to the table here. But it is all organized around this thing we call leadership. And I mentioned right at the outset here, leaders cause movement. Not everybody's effective at doing that. And that's what the metric that we actually pay attention to. Are you effective at getting the kind of movement that you want to get in order to produce the result that you want? So this definition actually speaks to that. Leadership is the activity of influencing others. Command and control comes out of the mix when you're influencing a state of being. It's leadership presence in order to co-creation, ownership transfers. It's not just my idea anymore. It's now our idea, and you've got a voice here. This is where the autonomy comes into play. Coordinated movement, where movement moves us into places we've never been before, into needing to have different skills and ways of thinking than we've ever done or had before. So we don't know how to do that. We will step on each other's toes. Absolutely guaranteed we're going to have conflict. But how do you coordinate movement, and how do you utilize conflict effectively so that you can get a high fidelity decision out of the conversation that takes place there? And for the sake of what? Why do we do all this? And this is where the pursuit of a worthy ideal comes into play here. A 6% revenue increase is not a worthy ideal. I'll tell you that right now. There's no juice in it, unless you happen to have your stock options depending on it. But most people don't have their options depending on it. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And those are the ones that actually need to do it in order for you to exercise your options.
Yeah, that guy in the warehouse driving for the forklift, moving pallets, does not understand 6% increase.
Nope.
That is not
either on the top line or the bottom line. He just doesn't care.
Not.
I still got to move pallets from point A to point B.
Not important. Yeah.
So this whole question of the for the sake of what, I mentioned that as I introduced the idea of the worthy ideal. The for the sake of what is not your vision. It's not the goals that are embedded in that, and it's not the objectives that are embedded in the goals. It's not that. The vision becomes a placeholder for something else, and it's the answer to what matters to me individually, what matters to us collectively. And that question, particularly on the individual basis, gets answered personally. You can't tell somebody why this matters. Now, you can make the business case for why you're doing something. That's a different story. But if you want to get emotional engagement, this question, why does it matter, has to be answered. What does it make possible for us, for me, to be, do, or have if we did this and we did it well? That I wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't do that. That's where you start to uncover personal meaning. And that's what the worthy ideal comes into, how that worthy ideal comes into play. It's aspirational. And in that leadership universe model, I didn't talk about that bottom level, which was spirit. And we address this in the 4 pillars when
Good
we're
point.
looking at innovation.
Good
That's
point.
where innovation comes from. And it's
Right.
a function of tapping into that worthy ideal, using that as juice, as a catalyst for innovation to appear, creativity to appear. And that influences your decision-making process. What kind of decisions are actually visible for us to make from a creative, innovative point of view?
Yeah.
So here's what we've been doing over the course of the last 5 sessions.
Yeah.
And today is number 6.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's just in recap. So what Blaine just talked about, and it's really important. This is the last exit on our conversation around decisions together. But the key, if there are key things we can have you take away, is you must start with for the sake of what. I can't say it any more empirically. If you start at 2 or 4 or 3 or 5, the outcome isn't going to be what you anticipated.
Yep.
It just won't be. You must start with answering the for the sake of what. And that may take you more than one meeting, more than one sit down, if you haven't identified that in your business or with your team or with your group. So you must start there. And then we touch just quick summary. Then you got to make sure is it really in alignment with the mission of the business and with the core values of the business and core values of your team, the core values of the humans? Does it contribute to the primary goal? Does it move a hinge? What's the cost? And we talked about people, time, and money in that triangle of cost, if you go back and look. And then last week we talked about, do you have 80% of the information? And make the decision at 80%. Because if you wait to 100%, it's going to go away.
Going back to Tom Bilyeu's slide, things
Yeah.
are moving real fast here.
Exactly. Somebody is climbing your mountain right behind you. That's one of my favorite. I love that quote. And so today we're going to spend time, we're going to talk about, if you say yes or no, what's the opportunity cost? Through all of this, we've talked about tangibles and intangibles. Today it's about, let's talk about the opportunity. That's the last gate in this process.
Yeah.
For making a decision. So.
Yeah, and no is a decision, and there is an upside and a downside to saying no. Yes is a decision. There's an upside and a downside to saying yes. Those we're defining as opportunity cost. The opportunity, as Dolan just said, is the gate that we're now moving through. There's an opportunity here. Do we take it or not? Yes or no?
Right.
And what's the upside and downside? Yeah. So when we're looking at this, there's the cost of saying yes. This gets to be kind of interesting here. If I say yes, oftentimes I have to be willing to go into mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have to go into mindset and really examine prioritization. And this goes back to some of the previous slides that we were looking, or the previous stopping off points in this little chart that we had here. Every yes requires the courage to literally say no to something else. And I'm reminded here of Steve Jobs. Part of the way that he defined his success and Apple's success was they knew what to say no to. They were disciplined in saying no. There was a decision inherent in that, and they left some stuff on the table. There's a cost to saying no to an opportunity. Make no mistake about it.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's where it's a prioritization process, and it's a function of your mindset. It truly is. Okay. Time and focus trade-off. When you say yes, all of a sudden you've added something else to the pie, and you're going to dilute something. Anytime you add something into the mix, it dilutes what else you've got going on in there. It's just home economics 101. If you're baking a pie, away we go. So this addresses one of the reasons that people have difficulty with decisions, because oftentimes there's not clarity. That goes into the clarity and chaos piece. If you're saying yes and you start stretching the energy field and the resource capacity of people, what has to go on hold? And if you're not clear about what that is, you end up with chaos on your hands. Yeah, and things get real funky real quickly. if you've said a yes without clarity, yes without understanding the complexity that is coming into play here. Because at the end of the day, clarity drives impact. If people are clear, they will behave in accordance with that clarity. If they're confused, a confused mind doesn't take action. They'll go to the water cooler and go, "Oh, that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. Oh, there's
Yeah,
my boss. I better nod my head and smile and wave."
exactly. Yeah. No, it's funny
And
because strategic alignment. So it's that kind of the way I think about this is FOMO, it's fear of missing out.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times as a leader, there's a tendency to lose track of the decision as a yes, as it focuses on the strategy, mission, values of the direction that you're going. We talked a little bit about how to measure that in the ARC, but what happens from an emotional perspective is we hear about. I'll give you a specific example. When you go to a mastermind and you sit in a business mastermind, you will, and there's a time space continuum. Your business is here on the time space continuum, and you hear people talking that are at this place on the time space continuum, and you come back and go, they're doing amazing, cool stuff. I'm going to do this in my company. And that shiny object, and you insert it into your business, breaks alignment because it's the fear of missing out. It's a comparative decision. So I'm comparing where I am to where you are without thinking about the path that it took to get from here to here. So we
Yeah.
have a FOMO, fear of missing out, a FOMO, a moment, or FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. They may think I'm not a good leader, right? FOPOs.
Yeah.
I'm throwing out my favorite acronyms today.
Acronyms.
FOPOs, FOMOs. I'll come up with more before we're done.
Well, there's an interesting paradox that's kind of embedded in that, and it has to do with the nature of best business practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we start modeling best business practices, I mean, that's a comparative analysis. What are they doing that we're not? Where's the delta? But if we try to introduce that best business practice into our organization, we say yes to that because, that's everybody's doing that. We got to go do that. You drop it in on your organization and you haven't prepped the organization for it. You got hell to pay. Yeah. One of the things when we're looking, honest to God,
That's
when,
right to
when
the
we're
point.
looking at, it's kind of like, rode hard and put away wet. It's one of those things.
Sorry, I'd missed my mute button there. Sorry.
But the idea of that best practice thing, I mean, it is a paradox, and it's that squirrel. But if the organization isn't organized in a way, isn't set up in a way, hasn't been prepped, and you drop that best practice on top of it,
Right.
Here's the difficulty with decisions, because they always involve change of some sort. The problem with change, and people have heard me say this ad nauseum sometimes, the problem with change isn't the change. The problem with change is the disruption to relationships that change causes. Anytime you make a decision, just know that it is disrupting somebody's relationship with something or someone. And they're going to dig their heels in until they can get resettled.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're off balance. And when people are off balance, they're not resourceful. And when they're not resourceful, they go into a victim position. They're making it happen. They're doing it to me. If only they would. I mean, all of that stuff starts to come out of the woodwork, and you've got an organization that's now stuck.
Right.
And that's the team impact.
And you get to change the nameplate on your desk to Sisyphus.
Yes.
So,
Sisyphus. Rolling a big rock up a big hill.
And do it again every day. Roll it up the hill. Roll it up the hill.
So this is kind of the cost of saying yes without a disciplined way of approaching that yes question. Do I say yes or no here? Do I say yes or no? I want to have some discipline in place. There's a cost to saying no also. There's a cost to saying yes. There's also a cost to saying no. Saying no, and then we've talked about FOMO here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you say yes, it's going to slow you down. If you say no, the cost of not doing something may also slow you down because you haven't taken advantage of an opportunity that's coming through the portal that could now do something. No is a decision. Oftentimes it's made to protect what you consider to be existing momentum. Yeah, we're going in this direction. I don't care what the market is doing. Yeah, and that's a dangerous place to go. Yeah, I've got to be able to pivot here. So leaders with vision know what to say no to, because they know if they say no, to, well, here's a different way of saying this. The quality of the no is determining the quality of the yes.
Perfect. That
So
was well.
yeah. So when you say yes to something and you've got a practiced way of saying no to things that makes sense, the yes that you say actually has resonance in your organization with your team. People go, okay, this has been well thought out because I've got history here that says we don't say yes to everything. We don't say no to everything either.
Right.
So that's, that courageous restraint is what we called it here, but it's a discipline. Yeah, you have to be disciplined in decision making here. And the development of discipline is not a free lunch experience. You pay heavy prices for discipline in terms of your energy, being focused, keeping yourself on track. Yeah, I mean, resisting peer pressure, resisting public pressure. I mean, all of these things to keep yourself grounded and centered.
Mm-hmm.
There's a cost to that. Make no mistake about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cultural signals.
Well, cultural signals, when you've gone through the steps that we've talked about previously with making decisions, and it's been fun doing this because this is normally a full day and a half exercise that Blaine and I do with a client to take them through just how to make a decision with a team. But when we think about that, it is one of the most important things is, am I creating a culture of focus or a culture of fear? That cost of no. That has to do with clarity. It has to do with co-creation. There are a lot, but that's a question as the leader. What culture am I creating?
Yep.
Not what climate am I creating? What culture am I creating? Culture lives, climate passes. What climate am I creating with my team? Am I creating a climate of focus or a climate of fear? And am I doing that with consistency, continuity, and context? The 3 C's, right? Am I doing that on that basis so that my team knows, which over time, trust has a multiplier effect. My team knows if I'm creating a culture of focus, they trust the decisions. They're a part of the decision. So it's really important from a culture signal inside of your organization. What are you creating? Ask yourself that question.
And if you're willing to ask that question, that begins to set you up in a practiced way to balance risk and reward. I mean, that's essentially what goes on with that kind of a discipline. Am I leading to maintain the status quo, or am I looking to grow? And grow doesn't mean just revenue. Grow means grow my team, grow our capacity to start over. I mean, there's a number of ways that growth gets defined. But the cost of saying no, if we're not particularly aware, can be a breakthrough potential that could have put us in a different category in the market that could be highly lucrative, but we said no to it. Okay. Ultimately, is your decision based on clarity, lack of clarity, comfort, or discomfort? If you're not uncomfortable in making a decision, this is another paradox. If you're comfortable making a decision, you probably haven't rigorously examined it.
I was gonna say, if you're comfortable, we got to check. We got a whole different problem.
Yeah, it's gone. Well, we've done it this way before. We'll just do it that way again.
Oh yeah, and we're going to get the same result or better.
No. Or better. Yeah. I won't go into the definition of insanity here, but you get the message.
Yeah, it doesn't go that way, but it's very important. And one thing, and to your point, Blaine, I think people need to understand and realize, leaders need to understand and realize, and with their teams, all of your team is not going to agree with you.
Absolutely. Yep.
If you're consensus driven and you head into risk and reward awareness and you're driving from a consensus perspective, you're about to step off the edge of the cliff and make a bad decision.
Yep.
Realize that, because I love the reminder that that change will occur, right? Change creates conflict. Conflict creates friction. Friction creates light. I'm stealing Blaineisms, by the way. So we kind of go through all that stuff. So rub your hands together. But anyway, here we go. Feel the heat. So let's go on. We could go on for this slide for quite a while.
Yeah. But but what Dolan's referencing here is, I mean, this all takes discipline. It all takes discipline. And there's an upside and a downside to any decision. And we're looking here at opportunity costs. Yeah. There's, you go through that gate of opportunity. The hope is we're going to get something that is going to be tangibly significant, but there's also something that we're leaving behind.
Yes.
So we want to be able to effectively gauge what that is. Is it an effective ROI? Is there a return on this investment? And what can come into play here when you're starting to look at those sorts of things at a personal level. Remember, we're looking at defining your the power of your mindset. And we'll look at your team's mindset here in the next slide, but your mindset. Yeah, how much does FOMO come into play? Yeah, with you and the way that you find yourself operating in your life. I mean, squirrel, and you go running off to the woods. Yeah, all of that's part of what's going on. Out of awareness, out of conscious awareness. So you're moving your mindset from one, and this is true for just about anybody I've ever met. There's always an element of FOMO that's in place. I'm going to say this is almost universal. What dominates, though? What dominates? That's what we want to be paying attention to. And you can't know that until you start exploring mindset. And you want to be able to move that fear of missing out to another way of thinking, which has to do with clarity of focus. Yeah. That allows you to move from reactivity to reflectively responding. The keyword there is reflectively responding. There's something that you're noticing, that you're paying attention to. Why did that come up? Where did that come from? What's the significance of that? Now, how can I make a response rather than a knee-jerk reaction?
Right.
And in a lot of organizations, I've been in enough executive meetings with clients and with my own companies to know that, we are social beings. We are social beings. Do we make decisions because we're afraid that people will like us, or we make decisions because we're afraid people won't like us? So what's the principles that are in play here, and what's your North Star around that? Again, this is a mindset piece. Yeah. How does that socialization component comes into play? I mean, those sorts of dynamics. And part of the key on understanding this is to look at the patterns that seem to be in place. One-off data points aren't particularly useful when we're exploring mindset. We want to be able to look at patterned ways of thinking and behaving. Right. And then these last two, I'll pass off to my partner in crime here.
To the frog voice dude.
To the frog, yeah. Kermit,
what's your point on this? But all of these, you'll see, and you'll see a thread that stitches through all of these, right? FOMO is fear, right? Reactive is fear. People pleasing is fear. From control to confidence is fear. It's that fear of letting things go. So there's a root word that sits at the beginning of each of these, which means sooner or later you have to understand what it is that you're afraid of, and those are questions you've got to deal with as a leader. So moving from control to confidence is that willingness to let go and trust in autonomy and trust that the decision will move forward, that your team. Scarcity to strategic vision is, again, the psychological term around scarcity is that negative side of there's not going to be enough. If I don't do this, there's just not going to be enough. I've got to do this because, and scarcity ties to need. Scarcity drives need. I need to because. We need to because. Anytime a sentence is predicated with the words need to, or has those words in there, it's time to step back and say, okay, so what scarcity are we addressing with this? So when you think about that, listen for these little indicators, but even listen to them. We talk about spirit, right? In that triangle that was up there. Listen to that spirit, that voice inside when you're thinking of this. Well, from scarcity to strategic vision, what do I need? What's the need? Why am I driving this from a need perspective? And that answers it, at least from an Froggy Boy's perspective. That's scarcity
That's scarcity.
in a
And
1 minute
yeah,
summary.
and that exists within each individual. Now, as a
Always,
leader,
always.
you're speaking to somebody out there. You've got constituents, that you work with, stakeholders that you work with. What's their mindset when it comes to decisions that are being made? Do they see themselves, and this is a mindset thing. This is an identity thing. Who am I? Where do I belong? Well, I'm a task taker. I'm the one that executes here. I'm not the strategy is over there someplace. That question of for the sake of what has never been asked of me. So why would I even consider it? So we want to be able to begin to migrate people's thinking from being simply, from an identity perspective, a task executor, a task taker. Give me the task and I'll go run with it, to a strategic contributor. This is where you're looking at, their inherent wisdom. They're the closest to the work process. They know what's going on. And you move them away, and if you're willing to do that and can do it effectively, just from being busy to looking at being purposeful. So it's the migration from, I put in my 8 hours to what did I contribute today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That whole notion of, what's your job and what do you get paid for?
Right.
Which is an interesting question to ask people. What's your job? I know what the job description is, so you can probably tell me what it is, but what do you get paid for? That's
Right.
outside of your job description. I'll tell you that right now. And if the more that you can put into that bundle, the more contribution you're going to be recognized as making. That's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
So they also have a FOMO dynamic going on.
Oh,
so they hear things, they read things, social media is going on. I mean, all that stuff is happening. Do they trust the vision that has been put in place here? And this is where the 4 pillars starts to come into play. How you've actually positioned things in terms of trust, in terms of accountability, components. All of these things are contributory to highly effective decisions. When you have this in place, again, every change, every decision causes changes, disrupt relationships. Relationships, when disrupted, by definition, people are off balance. They're just kind of knocked off. So they're going to be reactive. They can't not be reactive.
Right.
You want to find a way to, in the culture and in the conversation, have them become reflectively responsive. That's a leadership move, and it works at mindset. And then the final piece here has to move from, this is my job and this is what I do, to we've got a collective organization here. Everybody's in this together. So what's the alignment that we're actually producing with each other through these decisions? If I make a decision that's only in service of my workspace, at the effect of and at the cost of somebody else out there having to do something differently because I didn't think about them, now we've got some perturbation, we got some disagreement, we got some in the system.
Yeah, there's some rub there. One of my favorite things about that last bullet, and as you notice, those if you're listening to this today, or if you come back and watch this in the future, there's similarities across there. Is that those things that, like we've said, FOMO a lot, fear of missing out is a kind of a great generic bucket to talk about a lot of things, because it can mean things. Keyword again is fear, but one of my favorite things is the last bullet, from individual silos to collective agreement. I love in exercises in companies where we have multiple departments who have goals that are interdependent upon each other, and they never tell each other what their goals are.
Right.
They just expect you to comply. So
Yep.
there's no collective alignment that says, hey, by the way, can you actually do this with me?
Yeah. Do I have resources that you might need to do this better? Because it's how you do that is going to impact how I'm able to do what I'm being asked to do.
Right. So all of these bullets, and listen to these last few slides again. I would recommend it. But when you're working with your teams and you're thinking about it, think about it from the context of what we've talked about: the cost of the yes, the cost of the no, your mindset, their mindset, and look for those alignment, those hinges. I call them hinges. Look for
Yeah.
those hinges that swing those doors. You're not going to get them all, and you're not going to remember them all, but you're going to get close. Get as close as you can.
And the net metric here that you would end up working with is how much alignment, how much elegance is there after we've made this decision? Elegance and movement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for that.
co-created, coordinated movement. I mean, I was doing some work with a German pharmaceutical firm that was operating in Japan. This goes back a whole couple of decades when I was living there, and we had a German president, and then we had four division directors that were Japanese.
Yeah.
And I asked them, to fill out a little free form before we got together at an offsite. Give me your 3 highest priority goals for the company. Had 5 people on the team. I had 15 different, separate, completely autonomous goals that each one of them thought the others had said yes to.
Yeah.
And the others had no idea that this is what this guy was trying to do.
Yeah.
That day and a half offsite turned into a 3-day marathon as we began to hammer some stuff out here. But this notion of decision making, if you're making decisions in individual silos without consideration of what's going on out there, this is where drift comes into play, and you start moving very quickly away from the stated outcome.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sorry, I was just chuckling when you were saying that. I just experienced that this week with a client and a mastermind I sat in on, where it was clearly discussing 15 different ideas from 5 different people. It was fantastic.
And they swore up and down that they had buy-in from the others, and the others are going, "I've never seen this before.
Who are you again? What's your name?
Yeah, when did we bring you in?
What's your name? How long you been here?" Anyway, let's consequences.
So you can read this as well as Dolan and I can actually speak it, but there are consequences to ineffective decision making, and this is where the opportunity costs come into play. Yes or no, but there are consequences for the ways that you make these decisions. If you're chronically yes making, if you're chronically no making, what's the pattern? There are consequences. You dilute focus and miss goals. The team starts to burn out with frustration. There's wasted time, money, and energy. And this is a big one. I mean, when we're looking at elegance from a leadership perspective, elegance has to do with minimal unintended consequences. I cannot tell you the numbers of leaders that I've worked with over the last 40 years that have wasted incredible amounts of time, energy, and money cleaning up after themselves.
Right.
Because they made a decision that nobody else was on board with.
Yeah.
And then the final piece here has to do, and this was something that they were dealing with, loss of credibility. Yeah, this too shall pass. Just give him a moment to breathe, and he'll forget about it, or she'll forget about it, and we can get back to doing what we were doing anyway. So all of this stuff comes into play here if you're not intelligent about how you make decisions.
Yeah. I love the last one. And it just reminds me of when last time we were together in Orange County, and I was sitting on the patio and the young guy walked by.
Yeah.
And he's on the phone, and his comment was, "This is another lame ass idea that's going to it's going to change the universe." And I thought, boy, can you join us and just share what you just said? So anyway, fortunately, it had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So at least
the fact that it was walking around the streets in Orange County, I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I know, gotta be.
Oh Lord.
Oh boy. Anyway.
So, what do we do with all this stuff? Well, we've just given you 6 weeks of decision-making guidance.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's been stuff that has in some way, shape, or form resonated with you. But with any of this stuff, it's useless if it just sits on a shelf. I mean, it truly is. It's kind of like, well, that was an interesting 45 minutes. Okay, next, what am I going to do? Well, hopefully you're going to do something that's in alignment with where you want to go. Data, it's a data point. Only 20 to 30% of participants in personal and professional development programs ever follow through with action plans unless there's additional support provided. Yeah, Tony Robbins, and I've known Tony for years.
Great quote.
Yeah, if you've made a decision and haven't taken action, you haven't really made a decision. Yeah, my version of that, yeah, is it's time to take action on a decision you've already made. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's time to make decision or take action on a decision you've already made. So how do you do that? Working with mindset is really difficult to do on your own. I mean, it really is, folks. It's really difficult to do on your own because everything that you got points outward. Your ears listen out, your eyes look out. I mean, everything is out there. Most people don't know themselves well. And that's what we're looking at doing, is really looking at ourselves and going, who's in here? Who's in here? And that's where the juice is, and that's where the shift has to occur if you're going to be effective as a leader leading decisions.
Right.
So we've got a couple of suggestions for you here. One is, and this is a plain, shameless plug on our part. Shameless plug. Dolan and I do a mastermind. This is the 5th year that we're going to be doing this mastermind. We're doing 2 this year. The next one coming up begins June 2nd, and there's already a waiting list for it. If you'd like to be considered for this, just follow that URL and or scan that QR code, and it'll be taking you to a landing page that gives you a full explanation of what the mastermind contains, what it's about. It's a year-long program. We meet every week. Dolan and I facilitate these weekly meetings. There's a small mastermind group that is set in that rotates on a periodic basis. So you've got different eyes on yourself as you're going through this. Different eyes give you different information.
Yeah.
It's highly structured. There's a whole lot of learning that takes place in this. And it's not just, listen to 2, white-haired little guys talk. We're really interested in you doing something with it. Nothing happens until something moves. And the whole intent here is for you to move, So if you want information about the mastermind, our invitation is to just check out the information on the landing page. And if you're interested, sign up on the waiting list. No obligation. It's just a conversation. We'll get back to you, and we'll see what the interest is, see if you're a fit. Sometimes you're not a fit. That's fine. There's other stuff that we can do. All kinds of stuff here. So that's available.
Perfect.
Dr. White, anything to add as we close off here?
Nope. This has been 6 weeks on decisions. Goodness gracious. It's so first of all, we've seen our audience, the number of folks that are paying attention to what we're talking about growing. And there's a couple of things. The very first thing is just a sense of gratitude, just to say, hey, thank you for doing that. Absolutely. And for joining us and trusting us with that. This really is all about you. And keep coming back every Thursday at noon for lunch. We're here.
Yeah, noon for lunch.
Come have lunch with us. Bring a hot
dog. You're in Europe, and then it's dinner time.
Bring a chili dog. We're here.
Chili dog. Yeah,
we're good. And do my encouragement is having seen the impact on lives by going through the mastermind and creating a habit, a 52-week habit. Right? We know that habits don't happen in 21 days. That's a myth. So creating that habit and then applying that to your life and your career, it is generative. It does amazing things for you and for those around you. So would encourage you at least check it out. Click the link.
Yeah, that's my information. Yeah.
That's it.
And until next week we're gonna, we were talking before we started the show here. Next week, I think we're going to begin to unbundle the 4-pillar model.
Yeah.
And go into some detail for the upcoming next 4 weeks. We'll go into the 4 pillars and see what we can uncover there. So be sure you tune in next, as Dolan said, next Thursday at noon Pacific time. Wherever you may find yourself in the world. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We got all the bases covered, guys.
TikTok, Clockworks. I don't know. We're somewhere. I don't know.
You can find us everywhere.
We're all over the world. Rumble. I don't know. So we're somewhere.
Don't know about Rumble.
Anyway, there you go. All right, you guys.
You guys take care. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening. Take care. Love you, buddy.
I love you too, buddy. See you. Bye.